you coming down. Sorry for the delay. If I got everybody's attention, please. Good morning. This hearing is called to order. This is the public hearing of the Committee of the Whole regarding bill numbers 190152, 190153, 190154, and resolution number 190164. Mr. Stitt, please read the titles of the bills and the resolution.
Bill number 190152, an ordinance to adopt the capital program for the 6 fiscal years 2020 through 2025 inclusive. Bill number 190153, an ordinance to adopt the fiscal 2020 capital budget. Bill number 190154, an ordinance adopting the operating budget for fiscal year 2020. Resolution number 190164, resolution providing for the approval by the Council of the City of Philadelphia of a revised 5-year financial plan for the City of Philadelphia covering fiscal years 2020 through 2024 and incorporating proposed changes with respect to fiscal year 2019, which is to be submitted by the Mayor to the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority, the authority pursuant to the Intergovernmental Cooperation Agreement, authorized by an ordinance of this Council approved by the Mayor on January 3, 1992, Bill number 1563-A, by and between the city and the authority.
Thank you. Today we continue the public hearing of the Committee of the Whole to consider the bills read by Mr. Stitt that constitute proposed operating and capital spending measures for fiscal year 2020, a capital program and a forward-looking capital plan for fiscal years 2020 through fiscal year 2025. Today, we will hear testimony from the following city departments: the Free Library, Rural Arts, City Representative, Parks and Recreation, and then later this afternoon, there is public testimony. Mr. Stitt, the first person or people to testify today are?
Siobhan Reardon, sorry.
Good morning. We have your written testimony. I know you know the way it goes here. If you could give us a
will do.
Briefing. Okay.
So good morning,
Thank you.
Councilman Greenlee and members of the City Council. I'm Siobhan Reardon, President Director of the Free Library of Philadelphia, and I'm joined this morning by my board chair, of the Board of Trustees, Judge Pamela Denby, who will also make some comments. I'd like to begin by extending our appreciation to Mayor Kenney for proposing $2.5 million increase to the Free Library's budget. We all share the same goal: to open more of our libraries for more hours and more days, and to ensure that all of Philadelphia's residents have a maximum access to our resources and services. The additional $2.5 million has been allocated in 2 tranches. $2 million, along with $1 million in library state funds, will be used to open all neighborhood libraries for 6 days of service a week during the school year. And then $500,000 in maintenance support will be dedicated to emergency repairs to prevent closures. Once the doors are open, the library offers a plethora of services to our customers. Children's literacy is particularly important and is manifest through our new Play and Learn spaces at our Cecil B. Moore, Whitman, and Wyoming libraries, our work in infusing literacy in Star 1 and 2 child care facilities in the Logan and King-Sassing neighborhoods, and the library's leadership of Read by Fourth. Workforce development is also a service much in demand. We have partnered with CareerLink to place workforce navigators in 20 neighborhood libraries, including Bustleton, Northeast Regional, and Nicetown, providing classes and one-on-one assistance to those who are looking for work. In Pascalville, the library is leading a multi-partner, multi-year collaboration focused on meeting the needs of the unemployed in that neighborhood. Skills building and resume preparation are offered specifically for teens at our Haddington Library. I know many of you have heard about bias and discrimination at the library, which we all find disturbing and intolerable. I applaud the staff that stepped forward and raised the issue, and want to assure you that I and the boards take these concerns seriously. I have made a statement to all library employees about my commitment to addressing racial bias, homophobia, Islamophobia, and other issues, and have named an internal diversity and inclusion officer. Her charge includes the creation of a committee to review library policies, examine hiring and promotional practices, job descriptions, civil service exams, but most importantly, to research and define best practices for the entire Free Library organization. This body will also hear staff concerns through the establishment of employee relation groups and be integrally involved in developing responses that are timely, meaningful, impactful, and sensitive. I readily acknowledge that these first steps are small. Creating a bias-free workplace is a significant undertaking and not something that can be achieved in short order or, if ever, realistically. This is not meant as an excuse, but rather as a recognition of the enormity of what we are trying to do. And thank you, as always, for your support of the Free Library. Judge Denby.
Your Honor, how are you?
Good morning, and good morning, council members. And,
A little more into the microphone, please.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
It's rare that people can't hear me. I hope some of you got back to sleep after your phones all went off at 3:22 this morning. I just want to add a couple more points to what Siobhan said. The first thing is that we really have taken the claims of a lack of diversity or discrimination quite seriously. I've put together a board committee which will be overseeing and recommending things for the executive staff of the library to move forward on. We all are we're saddened that we spent so much of the last several years working on making an incredible customer experience for all the citizens and kind of forgot to take care of our own, perhaps. So we are on it. After a dozen years, we finally finished the first big stage of renovating the Central Library, and if you haven't been there, come see it. And the opening to the public was on Friday, and the new teen center was packed. So the citizens are appreciating what you have helped to bring about, and we're going to be doing revamped teen spaces in other branches. One of the many programs, and I don't want to put you all to sleep by reciting them, but one of them that has been a really big hit, and it was put together by a librarian, not something that came down from the top, prison and reentry services. And at our last borrowers ball, we had an auction to raise money specifically for that, and it was enthusiastically supported. And in that one, the Department of Prisons has been a very good partner, and we thank them for that. Everything else, I think, is probably going to be repetitive either of what we've said before or what Siobhan has told you, so I'm sure you have questions,
Okay.
whatever you want to do.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you both. I'm glad, Judge, you mentioned the prison and reentry services. It's one of the things I highlighted in the testimony, because I think obviously that's really important to
Yes.
try to get our returning citizens back in the swing of things as soon as possible. So, just a couple questions. I know a council member has a question too. In your budget detail, you highlight 61 vacancies in your department out of 708. Could you tell us how are there plans to decrease that number, and are there particular positions that are most challenging to fill?
Sure. So we will, yes, there are substantial vacancies in our municipal guard and library assistant titles, and we are working with the Office of Human Resources to tighten up that pipeline, but it is, there's a lot of movement within the system, as well as people in and out of the free library into other city departments, and so keeping those positions filled has always been, it's one of the two of the toughest positions to maintain a fill rate.
The library assistant, is that maybe salary level is one, or what is the reason you think that is a particular challenge?
So let me ask Joe. Where's Joe? Come on up here. So we know that yes, of course, it would. These are not highly paid positions, whether it's the municipal guard or the library assistant positions. And these are positions that you can transfer from department to department within the city of Philadelphia. So the question is keeping the fill rate on the department.
Right. Please identify yourself. Yes. Proceed.
Hi, I'm Joe Benford, Deputy Director of Customer Engagement at the Free Library. Traditionally, the library assistant position does start at a relatively low salary, so that once we hire, generally what we do is we hire part-time library assistants or clerical assistants, and then eventually promote them to full-time. But they definitely have a leg up for other jobs offered throughout the city. Many of them are clerical assistants. The salary level of the library assistant is a pay grade 6, which is relatively small. So when they get opportunities to go to 311 or water or finance, they
They
jump.
move on.
They jump ship. Rightfully so.
No, I got you. If you can make more money,
Right.
can't blame her for that. You do mention municipal guard. I know there's been problems in the past. I don't know if they're continuing where branches don't open because the guard is not available. Is that
Right.
Is that still a continuing problem, or is?
It's less bad.
Do you want to?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we have, under a previous administration, we had an agreement that our neighborhood libraries would be clean and safe places. And part of the safe quality of those places meant that we should have a municipal guard while the library was open. The problem is that there's only one library guard per neighborhood library. So if they have time, if they are sick or if they're taking vacation, then we have to scramble to get guard coverage for that neighborhood library during the week. So we do use the contract guard, PO, and we also hire temporary seasonal library facility guards, which do everything that the municipal guard does, but they only work 16 hours a week, so we can plug them in. But you're always going to have occasions where you can't find guard coverage. So we
And
don't.
then the library.
Well, then
would
it's up to the neighborhood library manager of that particular agency and the cluster leader to decide whether or not staff feel safe in remaining open without a guard. And in some of the neighborhoods, they don't feel safe. So.
Okay, all right. Appreciate that. Now, you mentioned, Mr. Ridden, your $2.5 million increase in the budget. We all like to see increases. I think there's a few people in here. I see a sign that says not enough. So I think we might be hearing from some people this afternoon on that. But for what is in the budget, and I see in your detail you show a $2 million increase. It's described as FY20 6-day service during school year. Now, is that where you're seeing most of this increase going, that 2.5, or to that
$2
to the
million.
6-day service?
$2 million of it will go to 6-day service for the school year, which means that it's a September through May open 6-day roster, and then there's $500,000 that will go to our maintenance budget because
Maintenance, okay.
to ensure that our buildings are opened. At least from are able to be open at least from a facility standpoint.
Last question for me, and sorry if I'm putting you on the spot a little bit. Obviously, there's some people who'd like to see more money in the budget. I'm sure you would too. What would be the priority if there was additional money? Could you prioritize that a little bit? What would you particularly like to see?
Well, of course, we're always going to be interested in ensuring the integrity of the 6-day service. That will always be our top priority, is ensuring that our libraries are open 6-day service.
So that would be priority, is
Yep.
trying to keep the 6-day service?
Yes.
Okay, all right. All right, I appreciate that. Councilwoman Reynolds Brown?
Morning, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am in total agreement with everybody, all of the activists for the library, that the library deserves more funding. So that's important. I have actually visited a number of libraries since I wrote you your letter to see for myself up close and personal. I was particularly struck by the library in Councilman Quinones Sanchez district and what the children and parents and visitors and guests have to endure on their way to the library. And so I'll be curious to know how your organization deals with that type of special circumstance throughout the system.
So,
How long have you been with us, Madam President of the library?
10 and a half years.
10 and a half years. And I do certainly recall when you first arrived, there were a lot of questions and concerns regarding the Board of Directors. So let's first speak to the progress you've made towards that particular part of your organization.
Yes. So that is one of the most diverse boards I've ever seen. I don't know, Pam, you want to talk to that at all, but it is mixture of men and women. It is across the demographic divide, whether race or profession or, but it is remarkably.
So that's one of the more diverse boards that it has become.
Yes.
Upon your arrival, it was not diverse at all. Okay, so please tell me in detail how many board members you have in a demographic breakdown under your leadership.
So there are 22 board members, and I'll have to get you the demographic break. Hold on, I think it's in here.
I will tell you that when I was looking to put together well, she's looking for the page that you can never find when you're looking for it. When I was looking to put together an oversight committee on this diversity and inclusion issue, I had no problem at all putting together a diverse group of people. So
I'm sorry, I did not hear you. Please repeat that.
I said when I was putting together this diversity and inclusion oversight committee of board members, it was not at all difficult to make it a diverse board among our members. It's a rich pool in which to drop your fishing line.
Well, that's progress over the last 10 years under the leadership of, I'm not calling your last name because I don't want to mispronounce your last name. So why don't you tell us, pronounce your last name because I always get it incorrect.
Denby.
No.
Reardon.
Me?
Reardon. Always, don't want to be disrespectful. So while someone provides or secures the demographics of the board,
Yep.
Let's move to the letter that I sent you on March 11th, 2019. That was before the mayor's budget address, I think, and it was before the article on March the 25th. And I thank you very, very much for the detailed response to the letter. On page 2 of that letter, you state, or maybe I state, all clusters host monthly staff training development sessions where we provide, so this is your response, where we provide specific training on any number of issues and policies. The diversity, equity, and inclusion protocols, as well as implicit bias trainings, are among the areas where you will provide more regularized education. So when does that start?
So it's actually already started. So we have had implicit bias training in every single one of our clusters through the past fiscal year, 2018, early 2019. And then as we begin to develop on what, as you say, the diversity, equity, and inclusion, so it will begin probably effective July 1st as we go into the new fiscal year to ensure that each of the trainings that we have every month.
And of those that took place in 2017, I'm trying to stay on top of my notes here.
Yep.
What happens after, in instances where employees register concerns? What is the level of follow-up and follow-through for instances like that?
So that is, Councilwoman, an area that absolutely needs to be improved. There's no doubt about it. We take too long, I would admit that, and then making sure that we're getting back to every single employee. And I think the other part of the concerns of the employee is the integrity in which somebody does make a claim. What happens, and ensuring the integrity of the claim.
Fairness and the follow-through.
Fairness and follow-through. Thank you.
So what will be the strategies then to ensure? Because it's one thing to listen to what people say.
Yeah.
It's another to watch what they do.
Precisely.
And so what will be the strategy in ensuring follow-up and helping employees feel that their issues are being fairly addressed?
So in addition to establishing the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, which is headed by a woman by the name of Danielle Henderson, there are 2 vacant positions which are crucial to this process in employee relations, and both of those need to be filled with folks who know how to, handle these claims.
How old is that particular office?
It's brand new. It's within the past 6 months.
Okay, so that's why the 2 vacancies?
So the 2 vacancies were people who are human resources specialists have left the department to go on to bigger and better things.
How many branches are there?
There are 53 neighborhood libraries. There are 49 neighborhood libraries, 3 regional libraries, a central library. library for the blind and physically handicapped, and then the rows are back.
Might you have somewhere in your testimony the demographics of the branch managers? Are any of them led by women? No, tell me those led by
Almost,
women
yeah.
and those led by people of color,
All right.
of the 53.
So of the branch managers, let's look. It's predominantly women. I want to say 60% women. Do we have this?
I'm sorry, you said 53%?
60.
Okay.
60%.
And what percentage of those are led by black and brown professionals?
So I have to get that information. I apologize, Councilwoman. I'm not laying my fingers on that one, but I want to say it is probably about 35%.
The bell has rung, and so we have to circle to the next
Okay.
next colleague, and I'll circle back when my time arrives. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Tauberberger, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple questions, and they relate about hours of operation. And are they standard throughout the city?
Pretty much, yes, pretty much.
So the
yes.
Northeast Regional Library is open about the same time as the main branch?
So no, the main library, Parkway Central Library is open 67 hours a week, and that's a state mandate, that specific unit has to be open that many hours because it's the largest of the collection, and it is, and because of the size of the collection, and it is the central library. So that's a state mandate.
So that is different, but then the
Right.
rest of the libraries
Right.
are open pretty much the similar timing?
Right,
Is that correct?
roughly 42 hours a week.
42 hours a week, and then if there are some problems, of course, we discussed that in a moment.
Right.
I will have a detailed question. Let me follow up on the state mandate. Does the state give any dollars towards the operation of that?
Sure. The state provides about $6.7 million to the Free Library of Philadelphia, predominantly to support the public service operations, mostly at the Central Library, but also for library collections and maintenance of our buildings.
So the central library is open, could you give me
67 hours a week.
67 hours, and what does that entail, the 60?
So it's Monday through Thursday, it's 9 to 9. Friday, it is 9 to 6. And Saturday, it is 10 to 6. 10 to 5? 9
you could be off a little bit. This is not-
And 4 hours on Sunday,
And 4 hours, it sounded like from 12 to 4 or something
1
like
to
that?
5.
Okay, all right. And the state mandates that because it's the largest collection in the state, is that correct?
You're right, and but the Free Library of Philadelphia is one of 4 research centers as determined by the state librarian, us, and Carnegie Library in Pittsburgh, Penn State, and the state library. So we are recognized as one of the vast resources in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
How many dates, or I guess hours, is the question I have? And this I would like a detailed answer if you don't have it now, but I would like you to come back to the
Okay.
committee and particularly to myself. How many hours have been lost because guards were not available to work at a particular branch?
Right, I'll get back to you.
Because that's important. There's a lot of young people, most of which are nameless, will never know who they are, that really depend on the libraries for a lot of things. A safe place to study, a place where the resources are there. You would be surprised how many quotes you can get from people that are very successful and how important the libraries were in their growing up and their livelihood. And I'm one of those kids, and as far as I enjoyed going to the library, I could study there quietly. My parents had a deli, and it was a busy deli. It was very, and yes, it was my duty as the only son of 2 German immigrants when I worked in that deli, but I also enjoyed my time at the library, so I was my own boss. I didn't have to answer the buzzer when someone came in and slice a half a pound of bologna.
You and me both.
My parents are gone now, so I can say that. They may catch up with me when we all meet again upstairs. But I'll tell you very, very bluntly, and it meant a lot to me to have uninterrupted time to study.
I understand.
And it was a great place to do that.
Right.
And I'd like that to happen for other children. 'cause
We all would too, yes.
They're not alone. And there may not be a lot of numbers, But when it's all said and done, we've done a great service for a lot of children and can help them greatly.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, that is it. I thank you very much. If you can get that back to me.
I will, absolutely.
And I will, actually, my staffer will have a card, so we'll
All
have
right.
a quicker email.
Thank you,
But I have
Councilman.
a card.
And Councilman, I believe you were probably a great slicer of bologna, I'm sure of that. Councilwoman Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for all that you do. Now, per your budget, we should not have to worry about libraries open 6 days.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We are looking forward to, not this year's budget, but next year, having George's Library open, started. And we would like to, like we've been talking for about a couple weeks. We would, are you part of Rebuild's press conferences? Yes, you are, because you're on that
We are
board,
within,
too.
sure. Mhm.
All right. Now, I would like to have 2 press conferences I'm asking for. One new, King Sessing with my $17
Yes.
million. Can I have it like yesterday? And I've been asking them, and Judge with all that long hair, geez, she waits till she gets it. She leaves that. It's got
She
hair.
can yank me off stage.
I'm telling you. And I would like to have one on George's Library to stand there on Lancaster Avenue and let the public know it's coming. Can you help me with that? I need 2 press conferences.
We'll take a look, and I'll talk to my communication staff. Sure.
Okay, and of course, we'd like to have them no later than the end of next week. I'm not pushing anybody.
Yeah, not at all.
So we are really excited about, and they're on opposite ends in my district, and we really want to let people know. So I'll follow up.
Great.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Bass?
Morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well, very well. I have a few questions, and I wanted to jump right in here. And I wanted to talk about, first, the mayor's proposal for $2.5 million in a funding increase to the free libraries budget. And I've been on record saying that I think that the library system needs a whole lot more than that. And we need the Friends of group have asked for, I think, around $15 million. I think, based on a visit to my libraries, that the number is probably close to $25 million, because as I talked to them, about some of the things that they were including in what was needed, I recognize from being in my libraries in my district that there are still some things that have not been included, just for the sake of, we're just trying to get over the hump, if you will. And, some of the things that we need to see, and I'm just going by, I'll use the Nicetown branch as an example, which I had a recent visit to, which you and I have discussed. It has a lot of needs. And we can't get to the bottom of Nicetown's needs alone with $2.5 million. It's just not going to do what we need to do. One of the things that I noticed in my district, I stretch from Chestnut Hill, Mount Airy, Germantown, Nicetown, Tioga, parts of Olney, parts of Logan, parts of West Oak Lane, parts of Feltonville, and parts of North Philadelphia. So it's a whole lot of real estate to cover. One of the things that I noticed in the more affluent neighborhoods is that there are these little library boxes, and they're cute, they look like little birdhouses, and people put them in front of their front doors, and you can come and you can put a book in, or you can take a book out, and it's sort of the concept of sort of this giving and sharing throughout the community, and the love of books and of literature. But we don't have those cute little library boxes and and the like down in sort of the rougher neighborhood, so to speak. And we don't have libraries that are open so that you have access to books and materials and computers like other neighborhoods do. So I just, for the life of me, I have to say, listen, I understand that, I was going to say an increase, some increases are better than nothing, but this is almost, in my opinion, this is almost nothing. $2.5 million is not enough to do nearly the level of work that needs to be done to the libraries. And how can we as a city keep talking about a poverty agenda? We keep talking about how we're so focused on eliminating poverty. The best way you can eliminate poverty and do something about it is to make sure you have an educated populace. And the way to do that is to make sure that the libraries are open. Like, this is not, I am not any sort of library expert. I don't have your background and knowledge of libraries and how they work, but I do have some common sense. And that says to me that the libraries need to be open. We need to make a significant investment of them, and that they have to work. And I think it's great what you're doing with the Central Library and the big celebration and splash that was this weekend. I was planning to get down there with my daughter, but we never actually made it down. But I saw the advertisement last week, and on the same day that I saw that advertisement, I also saw that the Nicetown branch was closed due to a lack of staffing. So it's really very hurtful that we're having this huge celebration for all of the city to see down on the Parkway, and at the same time, up in North Philly, Nicetown, y'all, sorry y'all, you're out of luck. The library's closed. So, these inadequacies are inequities. Thank you. Somebody gave me the word. These inequities that exist have to be dealt with, and I'd just like to hear your response to that. How are we going to deal with these things?
So with the $2.5 million, we are going to hire 45 new staff members to fill the gaps that we currently have. In addition to
So we're going to hire 45 new hires.
Right, in addition to what we've hired
And
this year.
each,
So it will filter around, particularly where we have the lower number of staff members throughout. Average staffing should be around 7 per library, so we want to make sure we get everybody up to that minimum through a combination of full-time and part-time
so the
staff.
average should be 7. And what is the average now?
Probably 6, would you say, Joe?
Probably around 6, but there are some branches that are below that level.
You got to talk into a microphone, they can't pick it up.
So the answer was the average is about 6, but there are some with 5.5.
Okay.
Okay, so, and so how do we, so is this number going to guarantee that our libraries are going to be open?
Yes, with the supplement that we're putting in with the state funds to make this happen, yes. So,
Okay.
but I want to be very careful that the Saturdays, that when we add the Saturdays, we're working internally now to say whether that's a full-day Saturday or 4-hour Saturday. That's the question we have around making sure. We will guarantee 6-day service, but it's the Saturday that we're working on to ensure how far we can go.
I think it's without question that we have to do a full day on Saturday. And I'll tell you, I was out Saturday night. I was out on Saturday night at 2 events, and at the first event we went to was probably around 8 o'clock in the evening that we got there, and around the Broad and Hunting Park area. And there were probably 30 young people hanging outside of a takeout store.
Right.
And, when someone spoke to them about, sort of just like the loitering, the hanging around, and they said that, well, we don't have any place else to go. Like, where else are we going? Where else? The rec center's closed, the library's closed, everything's closed. This is where we come. And so if we want to do something about young people and saving their lives and violence in the neighborhood, because I could just see with everyone hanging out on a warm Saturday night, and I won't say what the activity was that was going on, but it was not productive, I will tell you that. But with the level of activity that was happening in the neighborhood, I could easily see that something would likely happen after we left, as it got later into the evening.
Right.
And so the idea that, I don't expect the libraries to stay open all day and all night, but I do think that we have to push ourselves, and we have to do more. We have to do better, and we have to stay open later, particularly on Friday and Saturday nights, or afternoons. If we can stay open as late as possible, it's going to make a big difference. I think that you'll see a lot of our young people will be using those facilities.
You have no argument here, I understand.
So what are we going to do to get there? I'm glad you're on board. So you're on board with our request for $25 million, right? Yay! All right. Yes. Yes. Is that a yes? Yes.
We'll work together on this one,
We'll,
right?
we'll work together. Okay. So tell me what your thoughts are. What's your plan? How do we get here? How do we get closer to doing something about the problem?
Let me just begin by saying, I think the Free Library has the best staff in the world. I think that you can ask for the commitment of the staff and the extra mile that everybody goes. I mean, the city is blessed to have the marvelous staff that we do. It is a lot. It takes a lot to run this library system, and that's why the conversation around additional hours, how do we allocate it, how do we engage the community engagement piece of this is really important to us. And so, to your very point, we have community organizers in every clusters now, and they have done a tremendous amount of work in engaging the community. I do think it takes a village to ensure solid library service, and that's where I'm going to end.
Okay. Well, if we could figure out, and I agree with you that we have, some of the best employees in the library system.
Right.
And as someone who was a library kid myself, I certainly remember and recognize the work that's done by the library staff. And also, I didn't know if you wanted to comment in terms of like the amount of time off, because that seems
Sure.
to have become a part of the conversation
Right.
around funding for libraries
Right.
somehow.
Right.
That there is this, rate of absence by library workers
Right.
that is, higher than other departments. That they are, taking off time that they shouldn't take. I don't know exactly
So
what it is, but
right, let
there's
me
sort
jump
of
in,
the.
okay? Yeah.
Councilwoman, if I could ask this be delayed, because we want to circle, if I could ask you to circle back to be fair
Can
to
I,
everybody.
but I would,
Did the
can
bell
I
ring?
respond to this,
Pardon me?
please?
Did the bell ring?
Oh, yeah, about 3 minutes ago.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Oh, can we answer that question?
Yeah,
Can
if
I-
you
Can
could
I
just answer
the
that
question?
quick, and then we
I
could
do think
circle
it's
back. I
I
appreciate it.
do think it's an important question to answer because, my staff, it is not unusual for the Free Library of Philadelphia to be among the top 5 departments, and usually we head in about number 5. It is a historic number. This is not new. The Free Library of Philadelphia staff use their time. We went from being one of the older departments in the city to now being one of the younger departments in the city, and with that comes a different use of time. Many of our female staff members had children this year, and unfortunately, we have quite a number of staff, and last year was over 20 who are really quite ill. And so, really go home, take care of yourself. So yes, it's high. I can't imagine it's going to drop much lower, but we're running a rate of about 18%. But it's vacation and it's sick certified and sick. And,
Well, I just want to ask one
But I
quick
mean, there's a
question on that,
rationale to
'cause
there's a rationale to the time, right?
Right,
And
but
so-
I just want to be clear that there, in your estimation, there is not an abuse
No.
of the leave policy by library employees.
Not at all.
I just wanted to be clear on
Not
that.
at
Thank
all.
you, Mr.
No,
Chairman.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Dom?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning.
Good morning.
First of all, I want to thank you for all the great work the library is doing.
Thank you.
You guys have been a great partner.
Thank you.
So I have a few questions I wanted to ask, and that is, on the Saturday hours,
Right.
in a typical library in the city, what time would they be open?
So during the week, our libraries open, our neighborhood libraries open at 10 o'clock, and they're usually, the average is either 10 to 6 or 12 to 8. Those are sort of the hours, but they're open 8 hours a day when they're open.
How about on Saturday, if I would, what are we looking
So
at?
so we have a mixture right now. We have 23 that are, 23, Joe, or 30? Hold on, get into the mic.
Yeah. So we have 5 branches that only have 4 hours on Saturday from 1 to 5. The rest of the neighborhood libraries that are open 10 to 5.
So what is this, with this increase, what kind of increase in hours are going to occur on Saturday?
Well, we're going to get all 49. We'll have 53 agencies open on Saturday.
Okay. So I'm looking at the budget, and page 7, it says hours of service for 19, 106,800. And in 20, we're going to 122,000 hours of service, which is like a 15% increase
Right.
in the hours. And those are mostly all on Saturday?
So they're all, let me just jump in here. Councilman, it's actually a mixture of things. So it is about solidifying the service levels during the week, Monday to Friday, and then the additional, and that's where a lot of the 45 positions that we're talking about are going to fit in addition to then getting all the libraries open on Saturday, which the heavy use of the budget is actually on the temp seasonal and part-time budget is how we usually cover our Saturdays.
So I'm just looking at this financially. It looks like the hours are increasing overall 15%, and the cost of increasing those hours is about 7.5%.
So in addition to the $2 million that the mayor is adding, there's going to be an additional supplement of state money to add, getting us up to the a little over $3 million to make this happen.
Okay, so in the general fund, it shows $2.9 million increase is another.
So the 900,000 that other than 2 million is all of the increases, collective bargaining increases for the staff of 33
Okay.
and 47.
So our share is probably closer to 4.5 to 5.
Right.
And that other piece is coming in.
Yep.
That's good, okay.
Yep.
I have some other general questions that I'll circle back, but the capital budget shows that the Free Library has 11.4 million in capital funding that's been carried forward from as far back as fiscal 2009.
Right.
Any reason why we haven't invested or those monies?
So most of that money, if the project isn't underway, why don't we get Jim up here, please? If the project isn't underway, it's already complete, because right now, we have, you know, in the last 5 years, we have put together, we have fixed 100, we have provided support. 146 projects have been taken care of, anywhere from air conditionings to boilers to roofs and you name it. So we have been using the money. So there should be very little reserve left, except for projects that are just sort of in their final phases and closing out documentation. Jim, do you want to comment on that? Sure.
Please identify yourself.
Okay. Excuse me. My name is James Bacor. I'm the Vice President for Property Management for the library. The money that you've identified includes a number of dollars, quite a bit of dollars for that's listed as match from the library. So it's not what we have available right now when we take into account the $1 million for fiscal 2020 is about $2.3 million.
Is that money that we've actually borrowed and we're paying interest on?
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
Is that money that we've borrowed and are paying interest on?
No.
No, okay. My records, by the way, showed about $3 million of that is ours and the rest is other money. Does that sound about right?
I'll get you an exact summary that'll clarify that.
Okay.
What I'm looking at right now is about that, yes.
And when you're doing this work, do you use the cost-benefit analysis required by the Philadelphia Code, Chapter 22, Section 2200, that prioritizes investments that advance the library's goals?
I don't think I can answer that right now.
Okay.
Exactly. I'll have to get back to you on that.
And one of the performance goals is to have 25% of our staff complete required courses. Any idea what these courses cover and what they're about?
Right, so that's part of our strategic plan, and that we want to ensure that there's basic coursework that we expect all of our staff to participate in. And so right now, we're running about a little bit behind. We probably have about 20% of the staff. This was written, so we're about 20% of the staff have taken the required sort of curriculum that we want to make sure all of it. But it's over a course of 4 years, so we'll move everybody through during that period of
So
time.
what kind of courses would they be?
So, who wants to answer that? So it is a series of communication, so to, customer engagement,
Okay.
some technology courses, some supervisory courses. Those are sorts
So
of.
these are
just-
courses that are enabling them to do a better job?
Yeah,
Working in the
precisely.
library, basically?
That's
Customer
exactly
service
right.
oriented? Okay.
Precisely.
And then another question, the Free Library's property management, I guess that would be in your bailiwick?
Yep.
Program is requesting about 4.7 million this year for maintenance, security, and custodial services for 54 facilities. Do we have an idea what our maintenance costs are per square foot, including custodial costs? And how do our property management costs per square foot compare to public properties per square foot costs?
I've definitely done work on that, which I will send along to you, but compared to similar commercial facilities, we're maybe around $4 a square foot when we should be about 8 to 10.
So we're below. And have we compared this with public property?
With the Department of Public Property, no.
Is that something we could do, just to see what our...
Absolutely. Some of my figures are based on the BOMA standards, but I'll do exactly what you suggested.
I'm just wondering, last question, I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity for us, because public property is so big, that we could take advantage of some of the contracts they've negotiated, some of the efficiencies they have, or maybe you have, and they can take advantage. But I think there should be a collaboration between the two to see how we could maybe save some money.
And absolutely, and we work with Public Property Commissioner and the staff there quite frequently, as well as Energy. Have a lot of collaboration there, so it's a good suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Gim, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and good morning. Good morning. So first of all, you know, almost a decade after a prior administration had tried to close our libraries, it is really an incredible moment for us to be here talking about expanding our services. And I know that it has a lot not only to do with the current administration and the leadership at the library, but mostly the people in this room who have made libraries in every neighborhood a significant priority. So I first of all want to thank the advocates in this room for the tremendous work you've done to make sure that we keep moving forward and that we're making bigger and greater investments. And I'm confident that the people in this room will help us get there. So I wanted to ask about ensuring that service is available for our libraries 6 days a week over the course of the entire year. And I want to understand a little bit about the difference between the school year and the cost over the entire year. And also, you know, if you could start by saying why you think it matters to have an year-round, like what's the difference if we only insure it during the school year versus summer and year-round?
So service during the school year literally is clearly what it takes. We work with the school district as well as our local neighborhood schools to ensure that the work that we're doing ties in with the curriculum of the students. And it's funding that's the difference between the school year and a full year. And so when we do year-round service, it would be an additional I need Joe back up here to talk about the numbers, but it literally will then guarantee that there is the difference between the school year and the full year is that there won't be the summer slide. And so that we ensure that our children continue to read and keep up with their literacy efforts throughout the summer, so they start back to school ahead of the game when they go back in September. So that's the distinctive difference from an education and literacy standpoint. The numbers, I want to just get you the numbers on, it's just about another $1.2, $1.3 million, and that's just the full-time staff that we would need to ensure the service.
Great. And, you know, for me, one of the things, I mean, you know, I have 3 children. I raise them in our libraries in the summertime. And, you know, it seems like the library is the academic home for a lot of young people when school's not in session. So you run particular summer programs. I know my children took part in reading challenges. They did summer projects in their library. And can you talk a little bit about some of the programs that you would like to see run in the summer if we could get it to a year-round?
So it would be, so summer reading would actually take on probably I can't speak for Chris, who runs our youth services program, but it would be a much more robust program. There's no doubt about it. Right now we run a summer camp throughout the summer for a week or so with the children. And then right before they go back to, and the purpose of that is, and it's more toward the end of the summer so that they start school ready to go. But you know that we could almost think about LEAP as a year-round activity. The LEAP is the after-school enrichment program we carry during the week for our, it's Monday through Thursday and then again on Saturday. And so that would just continue throughout because of the intensity of that program with the tabletop literacy initiatives, as well as the thoughtful program we run for our teen leadership assistants would be year-round rather than the part-time work, because this is really a workforce investment in the young people in our neighborhoods when we hire them. So.
Thank you. One of the things that has mattered a lot is to make sure that our libraries are open on the weekends. Not every family has the ability to go in during a weekday, especially if the hours are relatively uncertain. And the expansion of Saturday hours for the library system was a big step in the right direction. So for the libraries who have been able to open on Saturdays, about how many hours have they been able to be open on a typical Saturday?
So of the 40 libraries that are now open on Saturday, 35 of them are 7-hour days from 10 until 5, and then there are 5 that are 1 until 5.
1 to 5, okay, great. And how did you manage to cover that expansion with your existing staff time? Did you have to go into overtime? Did you have to access other budgets that you might have used for other types of things?
All of the above, yes. Mm-hmm.
Could you be
Yes.
specific?
So yes, it was hiring additional part-time and temporary staff, lots of overtime being used to get the libraries open, as well as the additional funds from our state grants to make it happen.
Okay, and because those came out of state grants, did that mean that you couldn't fund other programs that you would have otherwise used the money for?
So it's largely library materials is the biggest budget that was impacted.
And I think one of the things that I'm starting to learn as I meet with advocates and others is about the state mandate for the percentage of funding that needs to be spent on new materials for the library. Nothing is more exciting than having new books and materials come in, whether it's videos or the latest fiction or new nonfiction and histories that come in through the library system. So if there is a state mandate that a certain percentage, I think it's 12%, is spent on materials?
So I appreciate everything you're saying regarding that, but let's make sure. I think one of the first things we have to do is understand the upon which that 12% is established. And so in this, and it is an issue across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, so it is on the totality of dollars that support the Free Library of Philadelphia, including pension and benefits and heat, light, and power, and all of these which are contributed services held at the city level and not part of our budget. And so I think one of the first things is the conversation with the Commonwealth to say, let's fix where that 12% is, and then we can have the conversation around the 12%. But I do think, so that, that number for the Free Library of Philadelphia is $98 million, right?
Wow.
So.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
you.
I'll come back
Thank
again.
you, Councilwoman. Let me sneak one question in here. The Free Library Foundation.
Yeah.
What role do they play in funding the actual operations? I know they raise money for.
Raise a lot of money.
Yeah, right.
So the Free Library of Philadelphia Foundation has been responsible for raising the bulk of the funding for our 21st century libraries. That was the renovation of the neighborhood libraries. Four of those, they funded the lion's share of all of the work that's being done at our Parkway Central Library, so which to date is somewhere above $60 million is privately funded. And then, of course, so summer reading is funded, part of a piece of our LEAP After School program. We have a program now that is where we're working with daycare stars 1 and 2 daycare centers to lift them to stars 3 and 4, and that's a special grant by Vanguard Foundation. We have any number of private supports around, you name it, our author event. So it's, essentially raise anywhere around $12 to $14 million for
12 to 14 million?
Between capital and program.
Okay. All right, thank you. Councilwoman Reynolds Brown, please.
Back to the issues of diversity and inclusion.
Right. Councilwoman, I just want to answer your question about how many libraries.
The demographics of the board?
Nope, particularly, we have 17 libraries where branch heads are people of color, so that amounts to 35% of our branches.
Okay. Have you had
And
a
now
chance to get the demographics of your board?
Yep, so of our 22 board members, 12 are female, 7 are African American, 2 are Latinx, 2 are Asian, 10 are white, and 2 don't identify.
Well, thank you for the improvement with regards to the board composition.
Sure.
10 years ago, it did not look like that
No, it did
at
not.
all.
That's right.
I want to follow up on Councilwoman Bass's questions regarding Nicetown. You say that the money that the foundation uses or used or raised recently were used for 4 libraries in addition to the main library. Who were the 4 lucky libraries that were beneficiaries of those dollars, given what Councilwoman Bass has said about the Nicetown Library?
So there was the South Philadelphia Library. There were 5 South Philadelphia, but that was largely funded by the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. It was the Logan Library on Broad and Wagner. It was the Lovett Library in Mount Airy. It was the Taccone Library on Torresdale Avenue, North Torresdale. And it was the Lillian Marrero Library on 6th and Lehigh.
And so the criteria that you use, or what is the criteria used for those libraries that become beneficiaries of hard-earned fundraising dollars?
Largely to do with the building conditions. These were, all of them, with the exception of Lovett, were old Carnegie buildings that were just in really significantly deteriorating conditions. And they were also in areas where the neighborhoods needed a bit more of a lift, that's for sure. And so that's how basically it was determined. It was fairly unscientific, other than the fact that the building conditions of these 4 facilities needed a lot of support.
Okay. You've given me the demographics on your board of directors. Please provide for us now the demographics on your executive suite.
Oh,
Who sits in your executive suite?
There are 5 executives, city-funded executives, and there are 2 female, 3 male, 4 white, 1. I think I'm going to say she identifies as mixed race.
So there's no African American in your executive suite?
Yes, there is. So my chief of staff.
So
So 1 is a person of color, 4 are white.
Of the 45 new hires, will they have to come to you by way of civil service?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
civil service? Okay.
Yes.
My homework indicates that the Board of Trustees of the Free Library authorized the creation of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee in May 2017.
Right.
It's 2 years later, and you're telling us that you are, quote, in the process of developing a Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Committee. Who currently is on the committee, and how many times has the committee met?
So the committee's never met, and it has not been populated yet. We're slow to this. We're slow to get this off the ground.
And so what is the role of leadership in across city government when the mayor has made it exceedingly clear that he wants to have a government that looks like Philadelphia, and we want to have executive suites that look like Philadelphia, and it's 2 years later, and we're hearing that the creation of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee is just forming. What's the role of leadership?
So our role is actually to get it off the ground and get going. And so we've begun the conversation internally. But a lot of it has to do with my ensuring that the executive team of the Free Library is actually well-trained, owns the issue, and is responding. But we know that we actually want to we're discussing about how the committee gets populated. We've met with a team of staff in addition to DC 47, but all of this needs to be a conversation as to what the committee looks like and what are the strengths that we need to ensure the success of the overall D&I work of the library.
And so when do you expect there when do you expect to have tangible evidence that this matters to the board?
So the board I don't know, Pam, you want to talk about, but yes, but the board of trustees has already established its work. Go ahead.
We have, when this became public this spring,
When what became public?
that there was concern among the employees about being treated fairly and equally. So I've put together a committee of board members, 3 blacks, 2 whites, 2 women, 3 men.
Can you submit that in writing to the chair, please, the names of those individuals? I do recall years ago when Councilman Good and I stated in a letter that we appreciate having as a part of the testimony the demographics of the board and the demographics of the executive suite, so that we actually had that as a part of the testimony. So if we could resume that practice, that would be huge.
We were meeting, having our first meeting at the end of this month, so it is moving.
Okay. On April 5th, your union reached out to you to discuss a mutual process wherein a labor management committee would be developed to address the bias discrimination issues. And please help us understand why you declined the offer if we are committed to diversity and inclusion.
So I didn't decline the offer because the letter states that there was an agreement and there was no agreement. There was never a conversation between myself and DC 47. Let me also state that DC 47 does not represent the bulk of my 1,500 employees. And so there's a conversation to be had. I'm more than happy to engage the unions on this.
Okay.
But it has to be a collaboration and not a dictate.
Of course. So is that, am I hearing you say then that members, the committee itself will be inclusive of the labor community, the union community, I'm asking?
So most of my staff is unionized, so,
I'm
so
talking-
by right, you have to include, the
Please don't
staff.
misunderstand me. I'm talking specifically about the Diversity and Inclusion Committee.
Yes, I understand. So by nature, the unions will have representation on the committee. No, I'd much rather a collaboration among the many unions, in addition to my many staff that are not represented. So I'm just giving you the view. So when I talk about the global organization, it is much larger than the, some number, 100 and so members of DC 47, 2187.
Okay.
Okay.
The bell has rung. I'll wait my turn.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Bass?
Thank you. I just want to follow up on Councilwoman Brown's questioning because I'm a little confused. So what percentage of your staff is represented by DC 47?
What did you say, Joe? About 200 or so? About 200. I'd say roughly 250
Out of?
out of 1,500.
Okay.
So when I'm talking about my staff, I'm talking about 100% of the human beings working in the organization, full-time, part-time,
Okay.
hourly.
I understand. I guess I'm a little perplexed as to why, if any organization reaches out, regardless of who they are, DC 47, the city's Human Relations Commission, whoever it is, and offers to be helpful around diversity and inclusion, why we would not offer, or why we would not accept that offer,
So-
knowing that we have a problem. We have a problem in the library system.
So, So we have I didn't turn anybody down.
Okay.
So let's understand, I did not turn anybody
Okay.
down.
So what was the response then?
My response was that we had not had a conversation around collaboration. And so
Okay.
that was what I said. And so
Okay.
if we want to have a conversation around collaboration, let's have a conversation around collaboration. But collaboration is just that. It's a dialogue. It's not a debate. It's not a dictate. And that's how
Well,
I received the letter.
I certainly understand, and I, can respect that, and I think that, anyone would respect that. I was under the impression that their offer was rejected, and you're saying that's not accurate.
That no, it was not accurate.
It was not rejected.
It was not rejected.
Okay, all right, very good. So the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, I do have some questions about that, and I'm still, confused, just going back to the councilwoman, as to why it took 2 years and they still haven't met, it still hasn't been populated. And, when you talk about your priorities, if it's a priority, you'll get it done. If it's important to you, you'll get it done. And the fact that it hasn't been done says this is not a priority, it's not important. And furthermore, it's to my understanding that there was an issue with a particular senior manager who had there was some concern about bias and discrimination, and there was an investigation that was launched, and you responded that although this particular employee's responses were absolutely unacceptable, that there was going to be no library action that was going to be taken.
From a
And
disciplinary standpoint.
I'm sorry?
From a disciplinary standpoint.
From a disciplinary. So if we have someone who's one of the library staff, so basically a City of Philadelphia employee, who has made remarks that are inappropriate, I think are your words, inappropriate, unacceptable, intolerable, and there was no disciplinary action that was made about this woman towards an African-American woman who was trying to do something around issues of diversity within the library system. Can you talk about that?
So I can't get into the specifics because of the privacy rules that surround this.
Sure,
but,
I understand.
I'm just saying, so we had, so there was an investigation. In addition to my own review of the situation, we came away that there was, yes, there was a bit inappropriate response by the senior staff member, but from a disciplinary standpoint, there was no intent and not a history of discriminatory behavior prior to that. And so were there actions that we took on the management side of it? Yes, but as it related to this specific issue, no.
I don't think that's acceptable.
I understand.
Understanding and action are two different things. I appreciate that you understand, but as a woman of color who has worked in environments that have been less than friendly and people have said things that are highly inappropriate, I can sit here right now and think of things that people have said to me that just sort of, upper level management felt, well, they said it was wrong, but we're not going to do anything about it. And I can't tell you how deep that stain goes and how hurtful that is. And it doesn't go away. And it particularly hurts when you are committed to your job and you feel like your job has really turned their backs on you when you need help, when you need assistance. And I think that that's exactly what we've done to library employees when we know that something wrong has happened, but we choose not to do anything about it in terms of addressing the employee and offering corrective action. Whereas if it feels like a lot of the time we are swift to discipline when it is someone of color.
Amen.
But when it is someone else, there is not that same level of attention that is given, or, there's a issue with respect here. There's an issue with respect. And so, I'm not sure that you get it.
Okay.
Okay, that's what you say. Okay, all right, okay. Well, ain't that something? Who is your new diversity and inclusion officer?
Her name is Danielle Henderson.
Okay, is she here? Is she part of the conversation?
She had a family emergency.
Okay, all right, because it would be great to hear from her in terms of what she intends to do about diversity and inclusion. And I'm hopeful that she'll have more to say than just okay about doing something about the policies at the library. But I just, I can't state it enough that there needs to be more. Like, okay is not acceptable. You need to do more. You need to do better. Or we need to get somebody who's going to do more and do better. That's no disrespect on you, but this is a city that's funded with taxpayers of all colors, all shades, and if we don't see that there is something that needs to happen to be respectful of them, then we need somebody who understands what is important to all colors, all communities, all people, all faith. It's not just one individual. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, Councilwoman, you have to know that we are deeply committed to this. It is a priority for this organization.
I can't tell it. Based on what you've given me and your response, I can't tell that you are deeply committed to anything related to diversity and inclusion. And show and prove. Show me what you got. Show me what you're going to do. Don't just talk to me about it. Show me. Before the end of this budget cycle, show me. Because I want the libraries to work. Like I said, I'm a library kid. I grew up in the public library, and I know how hard it was in my neighborhood in North Philly. It was hard for me to get to that library, but I love that building. I love what they did for me when I was in that building and the resources that were there. And so, to sit here and kind of nonchalantly just kind of, well, okay, that doesn't sit well with me. And so, I'm asking you for more. If you want the support of this council, I think that you deserve, that we deserve more from you than just okay.
Understood. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Dom, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning still. A couple other questions. Who runs the library's IT?
His name is John Meyer.
It's not through OIT, is it? It's not through our Office of Information
No,
Technology?
we have our own separate IT department, yes.
Is there any benefit for us to collaborate with OIT to see if there's some maybe savings there we could utilize?
Yeah. Let me have John come up because he does collaborate tremendously with OIT. So
He doesn't have to come up. I'm just suggesting that we do it.
yeah, no, there's quite a number of projects that we're working on together that with OIT because it's a pretty tight. They work similar systems.
Okay.
And the reason we're separate, Councilman, is because of the E-rate support that we get from the federal government.
Okay. And so recently, I just wanted to mention, I attended a great event at the library, and it was on one on the Parkway. I think Campaign for Working Families put it on,
Yes.
and I want to mention it today because it's appropriate. And it was supported by United Way, Department of Revenue, and it was around the earned income tax credit. And since today's April 15th, it's very important to talk about the earned income tax credit specifically today. But they had over 30 volunteers filling out tax returns for free. It was an amazing event. I want to thank you for making that space available. And it was unbelievable watching people coming in, getting their tax returns filled out, getting the ability to have checks refunded to them. And we continue to leave $100 million in Philadelphia that could go to 40,000 people. So thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
For the last 3 years, I want to mention something else. I've supported, I think it's 27 classes to take the cooking classes at your free library.
Yes.
And I'm not sure people know about these classes, but they're pretty amazing. Were they for like 3rd and 4th graders, I believe?
Yes, that's right.
And you have a pretty amazing chef or cook instructor, or when you want a chef
That's right.
instructor, who really gets the kids involved. And I just want to mention that because that's a great program you're doing. We need to expand it to more schools.
Right.
And if there would be some way of connecting more schools, it would be really good. Because I know the kids love the program, and they look forward to it. It's just great.
Right.
Last year when we were here, I challenged the library to go to the prisons and teach financial literacy. And you met the challenge. I asked for a proposal, you provided it, I supported it. I went in December to the graduation class, and I don't remember who taught the teacher, but she did a phenomenal job.
Right.
And these people had 50 hours of financial literacy, which was amazing.
Right.
I think it's one of the first in Pennsylvania that's actually going to the prisons and teaching financial literacy. I said to the commissioner and the prisons that we would continue to support financial literacy, and any person who's willing to take it, we would support it. I think there's 24 people right now taking financial literacy.
Yes, that's right.
One of my questions is, do you have the capacity to teach more than 24, to teach 50 or 100 or 150?
Do we have the capacity? I think the answer is yes, but let me just turn to Andrew and say, Andrew, yes? He's thrilled to do it.
Okay. And then after we saw that progress, I actually thought of taking into the prisons a coding class. So we have now Sylvester Mobley, for the last 2 months, has been teaching 16 people coming out coding. So when they come out this year, they can have jobs in coding.
Right.
So this year's challenge, because we still need to do more, is to make sure we expand financial literacy to all up there. Number 2, this is where I need your help. I want you to teach a course in entrepreneurship for people coming out of the prison. Houston, Texas has something along these lines, but we should be teaching them how to create their own business. Now, having said that, and I'm a big believer in education, but we're missing a second piece in this city. It's great to be educated. It's better to get a great job. Okay? So we have the best educated person. I remember one of my cousins got a PhD, and they were like, delivering newspapers. Okay? So, I mean, it's great to have a great education, but we also, in combination, we need a great job. How does the library, I think is a great, besides doing this work at the prisons, of teaching entrepreneurship, what I want to do is see if we can teach financial literacy and entrepreneurship at several different libraries so they become the conduit for job creation across the city.
So we begin this practice at our Business Resource and Innovation Center at the Parkway Central Library, is the sort of home of the work of working with small businesses and entrepreneurs, and basically our small business, our sweet spot with small businesses are companies under 20 people. But we spend a lot of time teaching people how to look at financials, understanding what it takes to build a business, all of the marketing analysis that goes through. So we are already in our Tacony library working with the Tacony CDC, and we plan to roll it out to a number of other neighborhoods throughout the system. We try to put it, we try to spread the wealth around the clusters if we can. But you want to make sure you're touching the quadrants of the city. So the answer is yes, we're ready, and we've been talking about it, but it's how it is we get it and train the staff to add this to the program roster.
So I have 2 requests.
Yeah.
As many, maybe 10 or 15 or 20 libraries, not that are on the Parkway, but all over the city.
Yes.
So
right.
Southwest, every district council should have one in their district.
Right.
Or 2, teaching
Yes.
financial literacy. And more importantly, not just financial literacy, teaching entrepreneurship.
Yes.
Because I've said these before, but we have 78.8% of the businesses in the city owned by white people. 10% is Asian. 2.4% is African American. And we have 41% population. So that really, if the libraries can help us with that, it would be huge.
Yes. Happy to work with you on
So
that
will
one.
you be able to get me a proposal for that? If you don't ASK, you don't GET.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I'll wait for that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Pleasure. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Gimm.
Before I go on to some of my questions, I just want to echo the concerns raised by Council Members Reynolds, Brown, and Bass about the importance of dealing with diversity within the Free Library. I don't think there's anybody in this room that won't go to the mat for the libraries, for our communities and our neighborhoods. As was said earlier, taxpayers fund this. We believe in it. It's a central public institution. But many of us received the survey that was done, and it is important for us to have it be addressed in a significant way, and that in particular with our union, DC 47, which represents many of the individuals who are on the lower end of the pay scale, that we want to make sure that their voices are heard as clearly and loudly, and that we can get a commitment from you to proactively reach out to DC 47 to have this open discussion within the library system as well.
Yes, both DC 47 and 33.
Yes.
Okay.
And we'll continue to follow up because I think it is an important issue, and I appreciate the comments made by Councilwoman Bass. It's hard to create the leverage and the momentum for public investments if there's doubt and distrust at the core of it. I wanted to go back about that state mandate for percentage of funding spent on new materials. So under the way the system is currently calculated, it would be roughly 98 million for the mandate. How much does the library actually spend on new materials?
4.5 million.
And is it the fact that the state does not enforce, or is your understanding that I know you are indicating that the mandate is probably because it applies to benefits and things external to a traditional operating budget, or I mean, the pensions and benefits are part of an operating budget, but because it goes significantly into future obligations, what do you feel is the number that you're looking for in the most ideal scenario?
What would you say?
Well,
So, hold on.
go back. Councilwoman, I would go back and look at before the financial crisis in 2008, when we, I believe, had a materials management for books and databases budget of about $9 million.
So double what you're currently spending. And does the state just not enforce this 12% mandate?
They have given us waivers. The alternative to the waiver is that we lose our state funding.
And speaking of the state budget, what does the state budget fund within the library system? What do you use their money primarily for?
Do you want me to take that? We actually have several positions that are funded out of that money. The staff at the library for the blind and physically handicapped. And the bulk of it does go towards collections.
Collections, okay. And and how much is the state budget? What proportion of the library's budget
It's
relies on
about
state budget?
7.6.
7.6 million. And prior to 2000, has that money increased or decreased over time?
It's been flat.
Flat, okay. Thank you. And, you know, one of the things I appreciate, thank you for responding to my request about understanding a little bit about maintenance within the libraries. I noticed that there are only a handful of libraries that are on docket for new major, I mean, I saw a few that had major renovations in 2017, a handful, but I don't see like a broad, it does not appear to me that the information you gave back showed a major renovations plan set forth for the library system. So could you talk a little bit about where you see the facilities assessment leading to in terms of the need for a real investment in infrastructure for the library?
So we do have 13 libraries in the rebuild program. So that's a very substantial investment with King Sessing and McPherson Square libraries coming up soon. We have the next investment mostly privately funded for our Frankfurt library. An additional work, though not, and then sort of some DO money on our Overbrook Park Library, which was deeply damaged through flooding this year. So but it's not quite the deep investment that Rebuild and 21st Century Libraries have in place.
And how much money is being invested through Rebuild? Like, what's the range of money that you're looking at per
So it's hard
roughly?
for me to say because it depends, you know. So right now, I believe that King Sessing is scheduled for a $7 million renovation, and McPherson Square, we're looking somewhere in the range of $12–13 million, which is substantial renovation there.
Yes. Okay, got it. The mayor's proposed an increase in maintenance support, and how many roofs or HVAC systems could you repair with the additional improvements from the mayor's.
So I'm going to bring up Jim to
Suggestion.
answer that
Okay.
question. So it's going to be a combination of what's in the capital budget there. We've been able to repair quite a number of roofs so far, but do you want to answer it? So Jim said there are 2 roofs that we'll be able to repair with the $500,000.
And how many are in need of repair?
Oh, Jim, how many are in need of repair? 12.
Okay, so that does not sound like it's enough. Is there a cost, has there been a cost discussed about what it would take to repair those 12 roofs?
So let me get Jim up here to answer the questions. Jim?
Could you get back to us on
Yes,
that?
well, why don't we get back to you?
Okay.
Because, Jim has done an assessment of every single library, the conditions in every single library, and what the issue is with every single library, and roofs tend to be the biggest, most expensive issue within these libraries. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay. Our average costs for the roofs, they can go anywhere from about $350 to one of the most recent ones we're working on was about $468. So say in a range of $400 each. So literally $1 million would take care of 2 roof jobs we were looking at, like D. Rodriguez, for instance, which is not a rebuild site. We're getting a quote. We work closely with public property and using their contracts is most efficient. And the mayor, of course, helped us out with Fox Chase. Overbrook Park was another issue. So we got some of these covered. But in the past 4 years, using every available resource that we had, and that's why we depleted our capital, we're around 15. We've replaced around 15 roofs. And
Over what period of time?
I'm sorry?
Over what period of time?
4 years.
Okay.
And we're looking at another 4 or 5. I'm hoping to get up to about 18, 19, and that level of activity hasn't happened in decades. So they're all guaranteed 30-year roof work. Some with the help of the trustees' funds and then reimbursed through capital. So that's about what we're looking at for that investment.
All right,
Thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Tauberberger?
Yes, sir. Just really one question, but it is, well, you decide how quickly you can get back to me. If we were to run every library at the same hours that we run the central library, it means Sunday hours, 4 hours, and extended hours during the week, what is the cost of that?
Oh, I'd have to do a lot of math.
Well, can you get some intern somewhere in that
Yes,
department
we
of
will work
yours
on
to
that.
do that math?
So the answer
Just in
is
case.
to run, so let me make sure I understand the question, is you want to see what it would cost to run the system 7 days a week?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes, because like I said, there's a lot of people we might inspire. Many of them are nameless.
Yep.
Many of them are poor right now.
Right.
But when they come away with the knowledge and and an interest in learning, we'll be able to do a great deal to this city and help this city. And I think that is our duty as custodians of the city trust, more or less, to look into those numbers and see what it would cost. Who knows? Is it possible? I would hope some of it is possible, but you got to know what the number is
Yes.
before you make the ask.
Yep.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Just real quick on it, please. Real quick on a follow-up on that. I talked about the foundation money before. You talked about some of the uses. Can that funds be used on personnel costs, let's say, to help on that, or?
so most of the money that comes in is actually restricted to specific projects, and so it depends upon what's in the restriction.
Okay.
So money that comes in for LEAP, we do hire part-time staff, but typically the money that comes in is generally not it pays for the foundation staff that actually raise the money and a few other things, but by and large, the private money doesn't provide for public service, and that has a lot to do with the fact that the city funds and the unions actually provide the public service in the city. So there's a conversation we'd have to be careful about that.
Okay.
About people doing the same jobs that are privately funded.
All right. Now, on the restrictions, is that in writing somewhere? Could you get us what those restrictions are, just so we understand which?
No, there's nothing stopped, because we do have staff, if you're on a private clinic. So for instance, the person that we have hired, the coordinator that we have hired, to run the Vanguard program is literally works specifically with daycare centers, but the work is being done in our King Sessing and one other library. So it's physically in the library, but doing work on a private grant. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I think I followed that. Okay, all right. Thank you. Councilwoman Reynolds Brown?
Yes, as you can tell, the guts of all of my questioning is around the issue of diversity and inclusion. You state that of your 5 exempt employees, 1 white female, 1 mixed race female, and 3 white males. Are there any black men in positions of leadership and responsibility within your organization?
On the foundation, yes.
On the foundation side?
Yes.
And can you help us understand why that's not apparent on the city side for folks who live and work, who live in the city of Philadelphia and pay taxes?
So these are positions that have been filled for quite some time now.
I'm sorry?
These are the positions that are there, myself and the 3 white men. We've been in our jobs for a couple of years now.
And you state that there's no expected change in these positions over the next 4 years.
Precisely, yes.
And so currently in the system, on the civil service side, am I hearing that the opportunity for black men to rise to positions of leadership and responsibility is...
So we have cluster leaders. We have people moving up. So the reason we structured the organization with additional library administrative librarians was to begin to prepare the organization for succession planning. And there is, in my cluster leaders there and my regional librarians, there are more moving through the organization much more quickly now that we've established the positions for them to promote into.
Okay. I want to thank you again for responding so promptly to my letter that came to you around February 21. One of the questions was, and I quote, how does the Free Library assess staff satisfaction with workplace culture, expectations, and standards? The response was, there is no official assessment.
Right.
So how do you gauge staff satisfaction when there's no official assessment? Do you think that that is important, being a leader of an organization of 1,500 employees? And what is your method for receiving feedback from employees to improve overall organizational performance?
So you're right. This is work that's really done at the cluster level, not at the holistic level. And you're bringing up an important point that as we go through understanding the work that we're doing with the organization, what's the type of work that we need to, what are the questionnaires that we need to put out to staff vis-a-vis job satisfaction. It's because part of the process, part of the work that we want to do on the D&I work is to really look at the job descriptions, the tests, the civil service tests, and what is it that we need to put in place, and if in fact people are concerned about being able to voice their opinion or voice what's going on, then we have to create the structure, the infrastructure within the organization, the safe space for those staff to go to be able to talk.
Yes. And to say that employees can also file complaints with the U.S. Equal Opportunity Commission, the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission, and the Philadelphia Commission on Human Relations, for me is an out, and quite frankly, an excuse if the organization itself does not have a means by which you can ensure, the guarantee is not reasonable, but you can ensure that folks will have a fair assessment of their circumstance for all the reasons that Councilwoman Bass articulated.
So we have, the first opportunity for us is really at our all-staff day, which is coming up on April 26th, where we'll be issuing a questionnaire, sort of pretty unscientific, but let's understand where the baseline is for the organization and where tactically we have to develop strength. And feed that to both the Board of Trustees and to create the benchmarks for us to know upon which we need to climb.
Yes. In your testimony, you state, and I quote, I readily acknowledge that these are first steps. Creating a bias-free workplace is a significant undertaking and not something that can be achieved in short order. I agree 2,000%. This is not meant as an excuse, but rather as recognition of the enormity of what we're trying to do. So the question becomes, and the committee hasn't met yet, so this question may indeed be premature, but has there been discussion about timelines and goals that address creating a bias-free workplace. And let me not answer the question for you. What is your game plan?
So the game plan is, the work that needs to be working with Andrea Custis at the Urban League to really begin to double down on the training that the executive team needs to take to own the issue and develop the benchmarks and the timeline before the D&I committee takes over. So at some point, we have to sort of set the stage for the D&I committee to begin understanding the work that they need to accomplish. And so, but it really does need to begin with the executive team and understanding that what they need to own about this process and how they become the people who will actually be the executive sponsors of the employee relation groups that we hope to be able to create around whatever the issue that the staff really need to be able to meet and talk about. And so all of that is all part of the process. I really do believe that once we get the lay of the land with the information that comes to us from our all-staff day, that we're able to begin understanding where the gaps are,
Yes.
and understanding what are the roadblocks to sort of more or less ventilate if you will, the executive management, the senior management, executive management of the organization, so people do really feel that they have an opportunity to grow through the organization.
Sure.
So,
Is your diversity and inclusion officer part of your executive team?
It's a really good point because just met with her about a week ago, and she's making the recommendation she become a member of the executive team, and I welcome that. Yes.
Okay. So I can have my say, but ultimately you get your way. And if indeed you all are serious, and
Yes.
to quote you, deeply committed,
Yes.
then the diversity and inclusion officers should not be optional. They should be required to be a part of the executive team because that sends a message to your organization that leadership cares.
Right.
And leadership is authentically concerned about changing the culture over there.
Right.
It's very disturbing.
I understand. Yeah, I agree with you.
Okay. Vetting the vendors for the training. Thrilled to hear that you have engaged the Urban League of Philadelphia, whose mission is about creating fairness, equity, and the like. So what is your process, or what will be your process for vetting vendors who will conduct the actual training for your employees within your organization?
So this is the work we hope to do with Andrea as she sort of helps us look at the vendors who are good at this work,
Okay.
who's in this universe. Because I do think that, there's a lot we don't know about this, and
Okay.
how is it we build the education and intelligence around it as well. But, just even among the group of staff that have brought this to the fore, even among those staff, there's capacity for training on the different issues that have come up. So I think that there's capacity within, in addition to bringing in vendors who have a lot of capacity in this
You're saying
work.
there's capacity within the organization?
I do. I think that there are certain staff members that have, prior to their work at the Free Library of Philadelphia, have done a lot of work in certain communities and in certain issues.
Okay. The bell has rung. I have to honor the clock. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilman Dom.
Thank you, Mr. President. Might be good afternoon now. Just a question on your in-person visits. The in-person visits went up by about, I guess, 540,000 from 18 to 19, and you opened 5 new libraries, I guess?
Yes, and the Blackwell Regional Library. So 6 units opened up that had been closed for a long period of time. Yes.
And you're increasing your hours by 15% roughly,
Right.
according to the information. But you're only targeting you're going to go up by about 11%. Do you think that's a conservative number?
What was the?
So you're targeting for 19, you say 5.4 million, but you're going to go for 20 when we're open on Saturdays to 6 million.
Yeah, so the biggest growth, so yes, we know that all the buildings are open. We're pretty excited about the population we're seeing come through the door at Parkway Central, but all of the libraries that have been renovated are seeing double-digit usage. But the big increase for us is also electronically, and how many people are literally making virtual visits to the library with the downloadables. So it is, we are cautious, deliberately cautious, because at what point in time there are a lot of people coming in, and it has a lot to do with the kind of programming that, for the physical visit, it's the kind of programming, it's less about the borrowing of material than it is about the physical programming and the sort of tactile programming that we're trying to produce to engage audience.
Is the circulation counts, is that where you pick up the internet visits?
So there are circulation counts in the downloads, yes.
And then the other question, I haven't, are you building new libraries and changing the libraries to look in some areas to have accommodating of co-working spaces?
So all of the libraries that have been renovated so far do include a co-working space because we've never had study rooms before. Actually, if you go to all of our libraries, you'll see very few actually have quiet rooms. And so this is a deliberate attempt for us to create the space for people to come in and actually have a step-away quiet space. It's particularly relevant at Parkway Central with the Business Research and Innovation Center. There are quite a lot of rooms for anybody to come in and conduct their business and sort of at the library, if you will.
Okay.
So it's nascent, but it's there.
And just one last comment that I made earlier, and that is that 100% on board with the educational, the library services, but would love to see the library even try to help us even more in placement of jobs, job creation, of training of people for employment, because it's a great venue for us. We have 54 facilities where we can get all these classes into the neighborhoods, because that's one of our biggest issues, to take people out of poverty, getting them a really good job, and the library could play a very large role in that.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony today. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Bass.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to say a couple of things. So I wanted to follow up on Councilwoman Blondo Reynolds-Brown. Councilwoman, on your comment, I disagree with you a little bit around that, you get your say and that she gets her way. I don't think that applies with taxpayer dollars. So I think the taxpayer is ultimately the one who is supposed to get their way. None of us in this chamber who are on the taxpayer's dime, if you will, we don't get our way.
Right.
We get what the taxpayer says should be. And the taxpayers have spoken loudly and clearly that they need more hours, that they need the libraries open, that they need more funding, they need more support. And I wanted to ask you about the $2.5 million increase. And just in reading through a little bit more thoroughly, so is that what the mayor is proposing, or is that what your request to the administration was?
So the $2.5 million increase is what the mayor has proposed for the Free Library.
So that was not your request?
So our request was a little larger than that.
Okay, so you did put in a request. Okay, so what was your request?
So it was additional days of service. It was a request for $15 million.
So your request was for $15 million? Okay, great. In previous years, in the last few years, have you put in requests? Because I noticed that the library funding has been flat for a number of years now. Is that correct?
We always put in a request, but this
You
was
always put in a request?
always, yeah.
Okay. And there has not been any increase in recent years?
So always there's increases for the collective bargaining increases, and there have been increases for overtime. Across the years, yes, there have been increases.
So, but not for materials, library, for basically beyond the staff, but not for the actual functioning of the libraries, the wear and tear of the buildings, the materials, the computers, all of those sorts of things.
There's always been a capital budget for us, sure, in that our capital budget, every year that we get in a capital appropriation to be able to take care of the buildings, whether it's boilers or roofs, and then rebuild has been, with the hopeful work around rebuild has been important for us as well.
Okay. One of the concerns that I have is, and again, your number was 15 million, my number was 25 million, because one of the things I noticed when I went to Nicetown was that Nicetown is more than just a library. There are people there for various reasons, and not all of them are there for books. And so the nature of the library, while the nature of the library has changed at the central branch, it's also changed in the neighborhoods. So as some neighborhoods have gotten parents who are, let's say, millennials living in Center City, bringing their children to the library on the weekend, enjoying the resources, having an opportunity to take advantage of everything that is offered. You also have uptown, you have a library where people are coming because there's heat and it's cold at home. You have people who are coming who, there's air conditioning when it works, and it's hot at home. You have people who are coming because there is unfavorable conditions where they are. So they're really coming to the library because they know this is a place that they can go. Nobody's going to bother them. They can sit. They can be left alone. They can read a book, or they can pretend to read a book, or they can just sit there. But they're coming because the libraries are a safe space. And there are a number of people that in my estimation, are probably in need of some form of social services and mental health services. So I noticed that you said the library has 53 plus branches.
Yes,
And you have 2 social workers
right,
that are located in the main branch.
yes.
And so how do we get at some of the other needs for the library system that exist, that are happening outside of the main branch, that are happening in the neighborhood? Like how are we going to, figure out, okay, well, this particular library needs something more than what's being offered. How do we get in front of it? How do we help? What are we going to do? What's the game plan?
Right, so we are working with, I'm trying to forget the university, but yes, we're looking to expand the support to our neighborhood libraries of the social workers, because our communities our communities and our staff need additional support in being able to deal with a lot of the sort of trauma-informed care, if you will. We have a proposal working with the university where they're I'm forgetting the name of it. They're going to be peer support, peer counselors, and they'll be placed at the cluster level. And so where there's a call from the neighborhood libraries, we'll be able to go out and respond much more effectively. But the current social workers that we have now do go out to the neighborhood libraries if there's a real crisis going. I realize it shouldn't take a crisis, but it's work that has been an important piece of support for both our constituents who need services, but also the staff who aren't necessarily trained in trauma-informed care, and it's a piece of work that we'll also be doing with all of our staff. As part of the training, building the capacity of the staff is really helping our staff understand what it is to provide for trauma-informed care.
I understand what you're saying about that they go out at a time of crisis,
Right.
but that's not a proactive approach.
Right.
And so if we can develop a proactive approach, along with the other folks you said, what was the community organizers that
Yes.
are going out?
Yes.
Okay. And so how many community organizers do we have?
We now have 9. When is one in each? Is 9? I think.
And how many branches do they each cover?
So each are working at the cluster level. So there are 6 libraries per cluster.
So they have 6, you're saying?
Right,
Okay,
yeah.
all right. So there's 9 clusters, you said?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just want to make sure I got everything down. And also, just going back to an earlier question about the Free Library Foundation, I know that there are a number of roles that they play in terms of, making repairs and fixing things. And there was a question about the roof, because I know that right now, well, when I came in, it was raining outside. I'm assuming it's probably still raining. And I know that right now in Nicetown Library, there's a trash can collecting rainwater in what's called the Job Center. And it's, a room with some tables and chairs. There's no computers. There's no anything. Like I said, it's got a leaky roof. There's no materials. And this is one of the most impoverished sections of the city of Philadelphia. So, I'm not sure how many other job centers exist in the free library system, but if they're in the condition of this one, then I would say that we have a real problem on our hands. My office is working directly with NWAN, which is the National Workforce Organization. I can't think of the full name of it, but it's headed by Myra Brown. And they do good work in terms of job placement, job training, just sort of career guidance, and she's been working with us to bring the appropriate services into the jobs bank, so that we can offer these services to folks in the community. But I'd like to know what role the library is going to have on a larger scale throughout the city of Philadelphia. How many of these jobs banks do we have, and how do they touch people? Tell me they're in better shape than this one is.
So there aren't many. So right now, we're working with Career Links, and I think we're in 18-20 libraries where Career Link is coming in and providing job search support in our libraries. But formalized job centers like at Nicetown, it's unique to Nicetown. We have a lot of training labs around the city where we teach our constituents how to use how to use a computer, how to conduct searches, how to look for a job. But nothing to the degree that Nicetown is pretty unique in that regard.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Council Lady. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gimm.
Thank you very much, Council President. So I have had a chance to meet with a number of the library advocates and friends of the free library groups who've come to us and have spoken about the conditions within some of the libraries. And I know we were just talking a little bit about facilities, a little bit about roofing, but some of the stories that we're hearing in the libraries where communities need them to be open the most have been pretty horrific. Kensington's branch, for example, with the mosquito infestation, which is almost impossible to imagine in this day and age. And, we are trying to make a big push within City Council because we're hearing from our communities and our neighborhoods and from amazing advocates that we need that money to go towards real year-round investments, but also significant repairs. And so what has been the dialogue with the mayor's office in terms of addressing the kinds of repairs, conditions within the library facilities? Do you have a long-term trajectory rather than a year-to-year kind of dance? Is there a more long-term dialogue that we're moving towards so we can assure the folks in Kensington that, they walk into their library, they're not going to be surrounded with conditions that we wouldn't subject any of our communities to?
So we're always in dialogue with everybody in the administration, and we do present whenever we have our hearing, whenever we have our presentation on the capital budget, we do present the sort of the global need for the system. We do know we do have a buildings conditions assessment on every single library, and that so the need is not a surprise to anybody. So we have, but it's not that people don't know. It's about the capacity to be able to, these buildings are old. We have how many buildings that are 100 years old? How many buildings are 80 years old? So, and they have there's deep need, and so.
So do you have a long-term, 5-year plan for repair that's been made public to both to us, to the administration, so that we can get the planning in gear over a long-term period of time? I would like to make sure that our 5-year plan, for example, has attention to library facilities repair over a 5-year trajectory.
Sure, we can get that to you.
Okay.
Jim's done a lot of work in that area.
Again, I know Councilman Greenlee had asked this question, but I just wanted to clarify the question about foundation funding. We have a commitment to see at a minimum 6 days a week, year-round service. We're saying that the gap is around 1.2 million. We're going to try and close that gap as best as we can on the city end. But is it possible for the foundation to also support some of that work to ensure that we also can get to year-round service? 6 days a week in every library branch in every single neighborhood in the city.
So I don't want to speak for the foundation, but I do think it is certainly, Pam is also on the foundation board, but we would have to present it to both the development staff and the foundation staff to see, determining their capacity to raise, that many millions of dollars, which is generally unrestricted money. And so unrestricted money is really the hardest money to raise. And so that's pretty much what it would have to be in order to cover, whether it's library materials or that sort of thing.
Again, to follow up on that, most people who donate to the foundation do it for a purpose, a building campaign, an author's program, a children's you name it. But they, for the most part, they, it's their money. They want to control it. And of course, the other thing is, if the foundation hires, those are going to be part-time people, contract workers, because, when we hire somebody on the city side, there's the whole benefit package that the city's on the hook for, so that gets complicated also.
Sure. I mean, I agree that I think that the primary use of the Free Library's operating dollars should be used to guarantee services year-round, 6 to 7 days a week in every single library branch, and that it should be spent on materials and on the types of things, repairs and other things that are mandated. And I think that that's a little bit of the tension that we're trying to understand here. So as I said, we are committed to try and making sure that this council makes the push for the libraries to get what they need. We'd also like to make sure that the library's central mission is met ahead of other programs as well.
Well, keep in mind that the foundation just finished raising huge amounts of money for the renovations of those branches. I don't know if you've been to them. I mean, those were tens of millions of dollars for those things, and because they were old buildings, they ran into all the little shop of horrors that happens whenever you open a wall or dig in a basement or what. So those buildings would have continued to be patched and band-aided and duct taped, except for these very specific campaigns. So.
Yes. No, we appreciate the foundation's support. I don't think that the library's mission would be complete without the incredible support of donors and of the foundation's work in building out a broader mission and initiative. We are trying to figure out how to make sure, though, that the people of the city get a promise for that 6-day-a-week, year-round service for every library branch. And I think this is the continuing dialogue that we still need to have to make sure that all of us are on that mission, and that the city will do its part to help meet it as well.
I just want to say we are grateful to hear that kind of commitment, because one of the things we noticed when we had those 4 branches and Blackwell closed because it was having renovations, that with a noticeable number of branches closed, the children's reading scores go down. It's that direct. So
Yes.
every hour we can work together to keep it open.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President. I'm sorry. You gonna claim that?
Councilman Greenlee.
I got to explain that. I was just at a ribbon cutting event when the council president of Darby was at the event, and I was just talking to someone saying, yeah, the council president was there. I don't want anybody saying, Clark's getting ready to resign. He's going to step down. All right. But thank you very much, Councilwoman. All right. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Reynolds Brown.
Yes. Representing Councilman Jones at this time. In your testimony, you mentioned the successful installation in certain libraries of play and learn spaces where children work on motor skills, language development, early literacy. What is the plan to expand these centers in all Philadelphia branches? And having been an educator and understand that need needs to be connected to strategies and where there's the greatest need, what is the plan?
So all those play and learn spaces were privately funded by the William Penn Foundation. So we believe that there's a tremendous amount of success. Certainly the children that have come in and taken advantage of those resources you see it was really acute, the change at our Cecil B. Moore Library, the number of children, the number of children have increased in their participation in those libraries. So,
Sure.
So yes, it would be a request back to the William Penn Foundation as well as other private organizations to fund it. But at this stage of the game, it would have to be a foundation-funded resource in order to do it.
Okay. And in your response to Councilman Greenlee, you said most of the foundation dollars go to restricted areas as dictated by the Philadelphia Foundation. To follow up on Councilwoman Gibbs, we would be interested in knowing the percentage So for that small percentage that is not driven by the foundation's dictates, then the prevailing question is using those dollars to go to 6 days or targeting those dollars for libraries that are in great need across the system.
Right, so most of those dollars would actually go to support the qualitative work that would our staff need, whether it is program support, honoraria. It won't be to hire employees because, of the union contractual stuff. So we try to keep those lines pretty clear.
Okay.
But all of the work of the foundation would be in support of that work.
Okay. I have been to the cooking classes at the library. I've been invited to speak to the participants and the like. And so to follow up on Councilman Dom's recommendation, they are an amazing extension of the library and should certainly be continued. I want to underscore his ask and recommendation around entrepreneurship training because everything is linked to poverty, and to the extent that we can show folk how to provide the technical assistance required to start their businesses, that would be huge. My last remaining questions are, there was discussion following up on Councilwoman Bass of the security officers, is that
Yes.
what you call them? Security officers?
So say more. Say more.
Forgive me, what do you call them?
You mean our outreach?
Yes, the outreach
Yep.
workers. So is the library at the table of the mayor's opioid task force?
Yes.
Okay, and how has that been helpful to that committee, specifically in the Councilwoman Sanchez area?
So we have been, and actually Joe Benford, who has been here a couple of times, is a member of that, and he's been sort of the conduit between what's going on at the opioid task force and the free library, and particularly how it is with the McPherson, particularly, and the work that we're doing vis-a-vis the opioid crisis on that campus and the Kensington Library. So what's happening in those neighborhoods, he's the connection between what's happening on that task force and the library.
Okay.
But a lot of it is so direct. We're still using Narcan to save, the sort of overdosing that's occurring still in the park. Plus we have bathroom attendants to ensure that, when you're coming into the bathroom, we actually ask for your library card because we want to know who's in there, and they're in there overly long.
I'm
So-
aware. My staff and I have been there and visited that entire world. So it is an elephant that we are really still trying to get our arms around as a city. You said that there are 13 libraries in the rebuild program. Are
In this first round, right?
in the first round?
Right.
Okay, all right, then that clarity is helpful. I think I've covered all of my questions. I am going to put on the record, and I don't know yet how I'm going to do this. I will confer with President Clark and my colleagues. But given the press around the culture at the library, there is some way where departments are required to report back to City Council what your progress has been.
Right.
My sadness is in learning that the Board of Trustees made the recommendation in 2017, and the committee is just forming. So given that fact, there will be a formal request for you to report back to this body what the progress has been across everything of what that type of training looks like.
Yes.
Okay, then thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilman Taubenberger.
Council President, thank you very much. And I actually should have asked for a point of information, and I want to just make sure I heard my ears correctly. I'm an agronomist by academic training, Bachelor of Science from Penn State University. As a soil scientist, and the environment and agricultural processes are very important. But you would raise something that I want to make sure I had it right, that you have a branch that has a mosquito infestation?
It did.
It's over.
Oh, yes, yes. There was one of our pipes burst, and there was a lot of moisture, and then there was the infestation, but it has been corrected.
It has now been resolved?
Yes.
So and how long did that go on before people said, hey, there's a problem here?
3 weeks.
Okay. Because mosquitoes are very,
They're nasty.
a terrible
Yes.
pathogen to human beings, and they should not be tolerated in any way.
Right.
So, okay, I just
So the
want
library had closed for a period of time while we went in to take care of the issue and fix the problem. So it's, once it was identified,
Sure.
we were in and we shut it down.
And it was basically because of a broken pipe
Yes.
for a period of time. And it
Yes.
took 3 weeks.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Council President, thank you very much. That answers my question.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Johnson.
Thank you, Council President. Just had a couple questions I wanted to ask. Just for the record, I submitted to the mayor's office a budget request supported by my colleagues requesting $6 million to go to full-time operation of our libraries, particularly from Monday to Saturday. Primarily the reason why I took that position is based upon the critical importance that libraries play inside our neighborhoods. My hub library was Queen Memorial Library as a kid, and that set the foundation for me to be a University of Pennsylvania Ivy League graduate, as well as a first African American to represent the 2nd Councilmanic District, but that all started with me having the opportunity to go to a public library that set the foundation and also provided me an outlet to enjoy myself as opposed to getting involved in things that are negative. And so it's critically important that beyond the $2 million that the mayor has budgeted, he go beyond that allocation to make sure we're staffing our libraries a significant portion of the week as well as throughout the summer. So I just want to state that for the record and also thank all my colleagues for signing on to the letter, and hopefully I was watching from upstairs. My colleague, Councilwoman Blanos Reynolds Brown, her questions were answered regarding diversity and inclusion as relates to the overall operation of the Philadelphia Free Library. A couple questions I wanted to ask, and I know I'm under time constraints, so I just want to get straight to the point. In the past, there has been high levels of vacancies for budgeted positions, so I want to get an idea of the progress you've been making to reduce those vacancies, and also high rates of leave usage, which has led to a loss of services. What are we doing to address those two issues? And then last, facilities emergencies also may come up, and then we have to close down our libraries. And I get these tweets from the activists and people living in the neighborhood and say, Councilman, Pasco Library is closed. This is the reason why it's closing. So can you answer those three particular questions and give me an idea? What are we doing to address those issues?
So let's begin with the last one first, in that we've been able to take care of a lot of building issues this year. So the rate of closures vis-a-vis building issues has gone from 50%, I want to say it's down below 15%. So we've come a long way in addressing many of those issues. And so I'm hopeful that, are the branches opening late? Yes, still, because of, someone coming in, showing up late or an illness. So, but the number of libraries that are closing for a building issue is substantially fewer, and I'm guessing at the 15%, but I can get that number for you. As I was asked the question before on the leave usage, so the Free Library of Philadelphia is traditionally one of the top 5, go Free Library, on the use of time, and that has a lot to do with the fact that this is prior to the shift in the workforce. It was an older organization and people were using their time before they left. It is now a much younger organization, and we've had quite a number of women or paternity leave for families and their children.
I'm all for that.
And then unfortunately, particularly over the past year, we've had, unfortunately, quite a number of staff, and it's in the 20s, with very severe illnesses. And so that is why it looks the way it does. And so, but the question was asked whether there was an abuse, and I went through all of the instances of the 1,311 employees that were on that list, and I could not see really any instance of abuse.
And staff training time.
And staff training time, so it adds up, it's 3 hours a month. The total number of open hours is less than 5% a year. And the idea is that this is such a big, diverse system, dispersed system, that we really want, and it was really the request by the staff to say we really do need to get together. We really do need to understand best practices. We want to know what's going on around the rest of the system. And we bring in, throughout the 9 clusters, name the offices, veterans, I know that we bring in folks from Veteran Affairs, we bring in the LGBTQIA for diversity and inclusion work. There's been a lot of work around One Philly, so these are the times and the opportunities once a month that our staff in the clusters actually get the training. So that's for the staff and the health and welfare of the staff. I think it's a critical bit of work. The better, the stronger your staff are, the better service they're going to be providing to our public. And your first question, I'm sorry. The rate of hire. So we have we have been working with the city's Office of Human Resources, and particularly Christine Derenick-Lopez, have done a great job sitting down with us and understanding. So where are the log jams in our hiring processes? And so it is about are we moving through to get the list sooner and going through the list and then putting up a test. But the other piece of it is they're working with us because the American Library Association will be meeting in Washington, D.C. this June, and we're already pre-planning the hire because we have quite a number of librarian vacancies. And so the more work that we do up front, so that by the time we get to the interview process and then what happens on the back end, so that we can actually hire up a lot of these librarians sooner rather than the time it has taken for us to hire. So it's much better.
Okay, and last but not least, and I will continuously aggressively advocate for funding for our libraries because it's that critically important for our youth. Will you move forward with a strategic plan? And this goes to my colleague, Councilman Reynolds Brown, request regarding diversity and inclusion on the Free Library Foundation Board. And these are things we talked about, prior to you even coming here, but will there be a strategic plan in the future that we can look at that deals specifically with diversifying the board, making sure that we're intentional about making sure the Free Library Foundation and all that the library here in the city of Philadelphia stands for reflect from a leadership standpoint what the city of Philadelphia looks like, and I just want to get your idea on that.
So,
I'm not sure which of the boards you meant. The trustee board, which is the city side board, is already very diverse.
Yeah.
The foundation board is less diverse. And to some extent, its efforts to expand are a bit hampered by the fact that people who join that board are expected to make a very significant financial commitment.
I know rich black people.
Give me their names. Really?
I do.
Really?
I mean, I do. I do. Asian too, and Puerto Rican.
I'm not saying they're not there, but because there are fewer of them, there are more demands on them. But if you have some candidates,
Yeah, I'll get you some recommendations.
Please.
I'll definitely do that.
Excellent.
in
So,
all
but to answer your
seriousness.
question, I would say that one of the key front-end pieces of work for the staff, what I'll call the staff committee, though what its makeup will be long-term, would be to establish the plan and the metrics and the benchmarks for success in the organization on diversity and inclusion.
Okay, just keep us updated
Will do.
as you go through that process. But you'll have a champion to make sure that we aggressively advocate on behalf of our children here. Not only just the children, you also have an initiative where people go to libraries looking for employment. These libraries are the hubs in our neighborhoods, similar to how we have our educational institutions, and we have to make sure they have the support necessary so it can serve as a pipeline for our young people to just follow their dreams. And so thank you very much for being here today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Bass.
She's
You
done.
good? Okay. All right, thank you. So there were a number of questions that were asked while I was not here. understand I'd probably have an interest in it, particularly around the issue with respect to diversity. What I'm going to ask you all to do is be prepared to come back on either April the 30th, which is the first callback date, or May 7th. May 7th, which is a callback date, to be prepared to give a more detailed and time-specific strategy in terms of how you are going to address it at the end of the day.
Yes.
Council President, the trustee board's Diversity and Inclusion Committee is having its initial meeting on the 30th, so if possible, could we?
You want to come back on the 7th?
Yeah.
I'm giving you 2 days, the 30th or May 7th.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
Can you do May 7th?
It's going to be bad.
Doesn't have to, pardon me?
Are you going to need testimony, or do you want a written report? Tell me what you.
However,
It's more
you
of an action
choose.
plan, as I understand it?
Yeah, I mean, I just need to know what, I mean, I didn't hear the testimony, but I've heard what was said, and
Yes,
it's very
yes.
troubling to me. So we need to get more specific information with respect to how you plan on addressing
Okay.
that.
So we'll take the 30th. We'll come back on the 30th.
Okay,
Yeah, okay. All right.
Right.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very, Councilwoman, did you have, Councilwoman Bass? Yeah.
I'm sorry, I did have one more question, and that's around contracts. So I have a lot of concern about where our contracts are going. We do a lot of contracting with folks who are not based in Philadelphia or in the Philadelphia region. And if we're really going to do something about poverty, then when we issue contracts, and I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that they are locally based to whatever extent is possible. And I've seen instances over and over again where that is not happening. So I noticed in your professional, in your summary of contracts, that I noticed that the number is actually decreasing. It looks like this year it went up just a tad bit, but it looks like over the years it's been coming down steadily in terms of the amount of outside contracts that we issue. But if you could also provide to us the amount or the number of those contracts that are locally based and those that are not locally based and where they are based, I would like to have that information as well, if you could
Sure.
provide that to the
Yep.
Mr. President.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay,
See you on the
thank you.
30th.